Hey guys, so last time on the last video you saw that I did indeed destroy the transmission in the Humvee, and so I want to give you some updates on where we are with that, and I also wanted to give you an update on my plans for LS Fest. And so I have ordered a new transmission. I've decided not to rebuild the Turbo 400. If I'm going to pull that transmission out again and invest money into it, I'm going to go to a 4L80, which is pretty much a Turbo 400 with an overdrive. It's a 4-speed transmission. So I called a company out in California called Maximum Transmissions. They build billet transmissions for Ultra 4 race trucks, and I have ordered a race spec Ultra 4 4L80 all billet transmission to replace the Turbo 400 that was in there. Now, it's complete overkill for this project, but I don't ever want to have to worry about my transmission burning up, dying, breaking, whatever. And so I've decided to go that route. Now, in doing that, I do have to change the shifter out. I don't think I'm going to be going with a factory Humvee overdrive shifter because they bring tons of money, like $800 used, $1,200 new. I'll probably just go with a winter shifter, much like an Ultra 4 or a buggy would have in it. And then while I've got it all out and I'm changing out the transmission, I'm going to go ahead and change out the transfer case as well. The chain-driven case that's in there is a great case, but it has a lot of slop in it, and I don't really feel like rebuilding it. So while I put the 4L80 in it, I'm going to go ahead and change to an Atlas gear-driven 2-speed with a 4-to-1 low gear. Now, this Atlas that I ordered is not going to be a twin stick. It's not going to be a 4-speed or a 3-speed. It is the very basic bomb-proof 2-speed single shifter traditional. You have 2-wheel drive, you have 4-wheel high and 4-wheel low and neutral, and that's it. And so that will be the drivetrain that replaces it. But because I'm having to order all this stuff and they're having to build it, it's going to be easily 4 to 6 weeks before I even receive the drivetrain. And then once I get it, I have to figure out cooling, I have to figure out shift linkages, I have to have the drive shafts redone. There's a lot that I'm going to have to do because of the change in drivetrain. Now, I've already got a cross member for a Humvee with a 4-speed. I found one of those on eBay one time really cheap, and I figured I might as well buy it because I was going to do the overdrive at some point. So that's in my basement. So the plans over the next 2 months really are to get the full billet 4-speed put in, get the Atlas put in, redo the drive shafts, get the linkage. I'm gonna have to rebuild the shifters using that winter shifter. So there's a lot there. That's a good bit of work, but I'm excited about it. I'm excited to get to that final product where I have the LS with an overdrive and gas mileage will be better, drivability will be way better, and it should be pretty bomb-proof running the 42-inch tires and being as heavy as that Humvee is. So that's the plan there. That's the direction we're going. It's already been ordered. That's what we're doing. Now, as far as LS Fest goes, I've had some really great people reach out to me and offer transmissions, offer help on rebuilding the transmission, things that would get the Humvee to LS Fest. And at this point, I just don't trust it enough to drive it all the way to Kentucky. And so I'm actually in the car right now heading to my plan B. And if you look back in the videos to the Hot Rod Power Tour video, I was at Kenwood Rod Shop in Peachtree City, Georgia, and we were having kind of a party there, and I told you in the video that one of those vehicles was mine. And so I'm actually headed right now to pick up that vehicle. It does have an LS motor in it, so I'm going to take it to LS Fest, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background about this vehicle. And so when I was 16 years old, I might even have been 15 years old, I found this truck I think it was in the Auto Trader, the magazine Auto Trader. Hold tight. It's part of doing videos in the car. So there you go. Spam caller, of course it was, interrupting the video. But where was I? We were talking about how the story of this truck, and I want you to hang on to this because it's going to make more sense as I get to where I'm actually picking up the vehicle. So I found the truck in the auto trader. I was 16 years old. Me and my dad went and looked at it. It was and is still, obviously, a 1986 K5 Blazer. And when I went and looked at it, it had a 454 big block, a turbo 400, a 12-bolt rear end. It was 4-wheel drive. The interior had been redone. And this was in 2000 or 1999 is when I got it. And so I bought it. It was $12,000. And at that time, that was a ton of money, especially for an old Blazer. But I loved it. It was big. It was really fast. And I just fell in love with it. So I bought it. Now, fast forward 2 years of ownership. Gas prices have gone up. And I am 18 years old trying to afford to maintain and keep up a K5 Blazer with a big block, turbo 400. I didn't understand any of that. It was carbureted. You know, I'm 18 years old. I had no clue about any of it. I just knew that when it kicked down, it would literally lift the front tire off the ground because it would twist so hard. And it had 31-inch tires. It wasn't lifted, wasn't, you know, anything spectacular there, but I just loved it. I loved it, I loved it. But when I was 18, it got to the point to where I knew I had to sell it because I couldn't afford the gas. I couldn't afford to fix it, maintain it. When the fuel pump went out, you know, you're talking, you might as well have told me that the Mars space station had an issue because I didn't know what it was. And they ended up putting an electrical fuel pump on it, and it was a Holly blue. So when you turned the key, it was, you know, it'd be real loud. But so I sold it when I was 18, and I sold it for $5,000. I bought it for 12. I sold it for 5. And I sold it for 5 because I was to the point where I just hated it because I didn't understand it, and it was constantly breaking, things like that. So I sold it. And that was when I was 18. Now, 8 years ago, which right off the top of my head, I don't know the math on that gap, but I decided that I was at a point in my life where if I had that Blazer now, being 8 years ago, that I could really do what I wanted with it. I could build it how I wanted to build it. And so I found an old insurance card, and I started checking the internet for the VIN number that was on the insurance card. I did a Carfax and found out that it was in, where was it? Somewhere in Virginia on the coast, or maybe North Carolina on the coast. But I found out the location. And so I go onto a forum called CK5, or I think it was Colorado K5 was the forum. And I just put up there, I said, hey guys, I'm looking for this Blazer, and I used some old photos I had of it. I'm looking for this Blazer. I know it to be in this general vicinity or city, Morehead City, that's where it was, Morehead City. I said, can y'all please help me find the Blazer I owned as my first car? And I had a ton of people say, yeah, absolutely, we're an hour from there, we're here, we're whatever. And then I had this one guy. This one guy responded back and he said, hey, I actually run training ops for special forces teams, and I believe it was Navy SEALs, in Morehead City or around Morehead City. We will use your Blazer as a training exercise to find where it's located. And this is not a lie, this is an absolute truth. And of course I think it's a joke. I'm like, yeah, whatever, there's no way like that this guy's really a Navy SEAL or even a Special Forces, and they're not going to do that, whatever. And, you know, in the request for them to help me find, I did put my email address. So weeks go by, and I haven't forgot about it, obviously, but I've kind of put it on the back burner, like, hey, if it turns up, it turns up. And lo and behold, I opened my email one morning, and there's this message from a guy, and all it says in the subject line is, we found your Blazer. And when I open it up, there are photos from probably 200 yards out, across a field, across a road, and there's a picture of a K5 Blazer that looks just like mine in someone's driveway. Now, I'm like, that ain't it. So I keep scrolling down, and every time a picture's taken, as I scroll down, it gets closer and closer and closer to the Blazer, until it's literally somebody is under the Blazer taking pictures of the engine, the transmission, and so forth and so on. And come to find out, they did indeed use that as a Special Forces training mission to find and acquire that K5 Blazer. And what he sent me was the address of the owner. And then because of what I do, I was able to cross-reference the address to the owner's information. I was able to find the owner on Facebook, like super stalker stuff. Find the owner on Facebook and simply message the guy and say, hey, just curious, do you own or have in your possession this K5 Blazer? And I put an old picture I used to have. And he responded back very cautiously. Yeah, that's my truck. And I was able to trace it back to when he bought it from the guy that I sold it to. And so I got on the phone with him. I said, hey, I want to buy that Blazer back from you. It was mine when I was 16. I was the second owner. The original owner actually built it for his son, but it was too fast, and he sold it because he didn't want his son to get hurt. So I drive with my brother and a gooseneck trailer all the way to Morehead City from Atlanta, and I end up buying this Blazer for $4,500 back. So I bought it for $12,000, I sold it for $5,000, and I bought it for $4,500 from this guy. Michael was his name. Now, he had lifted it, put 35-inch tires on it, and it actually looked really nice, but it was definitely 100% my Blazer. VIN numbers matched, interior was still the same. It was in way worse shape because it had been on the coast for a while, I'm guessing. Had a lot of rust on the floorboards and things like that. And so I buy it from Michael. We haul it home, park it in the driveway, and I realized that I had just bought back a lot of work. Like, this thing needed a lot. It had the original carpet in it, and that got wet somehow, I'm guessing in the ocean. And then somebody had put another carpet right on top of that. And so that wet saltwater carpet just sat on the floors. And so I took it to a hot rod shop called W&H Restoration, probably a year after I had bought it back, and said, I really want to get this thing back into the way I had it when I was 16, and I'd like you to help me, etc., etc. So he says to me, why don't we just take the body off and do a complete full frame off restoration? And my buddy, who has built hot rods for a very long time, says, Matt, do not do that. Like, if you do that, you will regret it. Like, this is going to turn in from a 6-month project to a 2-year project. And of course, I didn't listen. So I let W&H Restoration start with the frame off. They took the frame off, or the body off the frame. They took the motor out. They took the trans out. And I said, hey, while we have the motor and trans out, why don't we put an LS motor in it and something a little bit more modern drivetrain? I really like the 12-bolt axle, but let's put in a more modern drivetrain. So we did. I sold the big block. I sold the Turbo 400. It didn't have a 205. I think I had a 203 transfer case. Sold all that, and I went and bought an LS motor, which we'll talk about more in a different video when I'm showing you the truck. And we powder coated the frame, like literally the best of every single thing you could do to that vehicle was done. And the guy who was working on it at WH Restoration was a phenomenal fabricator. And he was able to rebuild the entire floors, the rocker panels, everything to look like it had never been touched. And there was a lot of other special custom stuff we did, and I'll show you that. But long story short, it got to a certain point at his shop and it wouldn't move any further. It just, the project kind of stopped. And so at that point, I reached out to Kenwood Rod Shop in Peachtree City. And Kenwood Rod Shop, you know them because they were on TV for a show called Lost in Transmission. They build all of Rutledge Wood's cars. They're just a phenomenal hot rod shop. And I called him and told him what was going on, and that I had this truck that needed to be completed and things like that. And so they decided to take on the project. We came up with a plan, a budget, etc. And the long story short of it is, today is the day they have finished it. And it has been out of my hands for 8 years being built. And today is the day I go and get it. Now, it's not 100% of what I had planned, but it's 99.5% of exactly what I had dreamed of. And this will actually be the first time that I am seeing it complete. I've seen it, just the wheels are on it. I put trail ready beadlocks. I mean, it hits me right here. It's what I wanted. So I'll tell you some other cool stories about it. In my job, I own a real estate brokerage, and my brother is a real estate photographer for our listings that we sell. And so one day my brother calls me up and he says, hey, I just photoed this guy's house in Duluth, and he has a picture on his wall down in his basement of a Blazer that looks exactly like your Blazer. And I'm thinking, all right, you know, that's neat. I haven't seen my Blazer in 7 years. It's been being worked on, but that's cool. And so we start talking a little bit more about it, and he's describing this Blazer to me. And my Blazer was very specific. It had a luggage rack on the hardtop, and it had the spoiler. It was like a GM factory option to have this chrome spoiler on the back, so dust and stuff wouldn't come into the back window. And he's telling me all this, and he said, yeah, and it had 2 different wheels on the driver's side and 2 different wheels on the passenger side, meaning one side didn't match the other, but they were very close. And I was like, that is my Blazer. Because the guy who sold it to me, he had done that and didn't tell me. And I specifically remember going, are those different wheels? Like after I had bought it. And so I said, that is my Blazer. What's this guy's name? He's like, I don't know his name. All I have is his address. So I look up his address and find out his name is Pete and his last name. And so with my Blazer, one of the cool things about it, since I was the second owner, was I had all the paperwork, the original build sheet, like everything for it. And I still to this day, I actually have it in the back of the truck right now, but I pulled that stuff out and I looked at the original GM factory. They used to give you like a credit card with your name on it. And I looked at that card and the names matched. So this was the guy that sold me my Blazer. Like my brother, years later, like probably 16 years later, my brother's in this guy's house taking pictures and noticed my Blazer on the wall as a photo from when he had built it. And so I'm like, okay, well, you've got to get me this guy's contact information because I need to talk to him. I've got questions. Like, I want the background. I want the full story of this truck because I'm to the point where I've got so much invested in it that it'd be neat to know a lot of the backstory. So he gets me the phone number and I call this guy and I simply say, hey, my brother told me that you at one point put a big block in a K5 Blazer. I am thinking about doing the same thing. Can I come over and ask you some questions and discuss that? And he said, absolutely. Like, this is a car guy. No real car guy is going to turn down a chance to talk cars. So he says, yeah, come on over tomorrow. I'm retired, whatever. So I get over there and he takes me down to the basement. You know, we meet, whatever. Takes me down to the basement and he shows me the pictures of the Blazer. And I said, well, what did you do with it? And he goes, well, I actually sold it to a kid who 3 days after buying it was racing a Mustang, rolled it over, and died in it. And I was like, really? I was like, where did you hear that from? He goes, well, I never gave the kid the title, the original title to the truck, and I called his mom to set up to give the title, and she told me that he was racing a Mustang, it rolled over, and he died. And he's like, and he's almost in tears telling me the story, and he's like, and I've just never been able to live with that I built that truck and it killed that woman's kid. And I'm just sitting there like, oh crap, like I am that kid. So in my back pocket, I had all that warranty information, warranty card, all that stuff with his name on it. And I said, well, man, that's a really impactful story. I said, but I have some news for you. I am that kid that bought your Blazer 16 or 17 years ago. And he literally like, sorry, I'm turning so my hand's moving, but he's literally like, he like fell back on his pool table. Like, he was such in shock, and he's going, no, that's impossible. That kid's dead. Like, no way, no way. And so I pull out the warranty card out of my back pocket, and I'm like, no, dude, like that, I'm the kid. I bought your Blazer, and I still have it today. And he was blown away, extremely emotional, just extremely emotional. So we get to talking, and he gives me this awesome backstory on this Blazer. Like, from the time that he bought it brand new, this thing has always had a really cool story to go along with it. And so today I go and pick it up, and this guy does want to see it. He moved about 2 hours north of me, but he did say when I get it back, drive it up to his new house and show it to him because he wants to see it, and I obviously will do that. But I say all of that to tell you that my plan B is not me just going out and buying some truck. Like, I'm not doing that today. My plan B is my first car, 7 years of work, a lot of money, and it's exactly what I dreamed of when I was 16 and now have the finances to build. And so if you're 16 and you're watching this video and you have a car or you have anything and you want to do something to it or build it or whatever, don't ever give up on that, because it's just as fun now as it would have been when I was 16. And so it's a lot of hard work, but you know, that's my K5. And so I'm gonna go ahead and head down here. I'm gonna put it on a trailer. Sorry. I'm gonna haul it home, and in the next video, I will show it to you.